everyone. This is Jen Lowe. Here's where we grow. Today is all about pediatric OT, so occupational therapy, and I am joined today with Kendra Myers, who is a occupational therapist. She's been in the field for 13 years and has a lot of different experience in outpatient, working with all types of families. She also has a background in neurodevelopment treatment. For 9 years, and she loves working with miracle kids. So I'm super excited to have you to pick your brain and share any resources and just education that you might have. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jen. I'm happy to
Yeah.
be here.
I was curious what led you to want to pursue OT and especially the neurodevelopment piece I hadn't heard of before. So if you can kind of talk a little bit about your why and then kind of what is neurodevelopment.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in my freshman year of college at UNM, kind of going through that, like, what do I want to be when I grow up thing, um, I kind of knew I always wanted to work with kids. My mom was a teacher, and she said, you should be an occupational therapist.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, well, I know I don't want to be a teacher. So, what is an occupational
Yeah.
therapist? And so, I started doing some volunteering and digging into what OT actually is and
Mhm.
just fell in love with it. So that is kind of how I ended up in the field, and why I work in pediatrics. I just love working with kiddos. And probably, let's see, I think I had been an OT for 3 or 4 years, um, and had worked with some therapists who were neurodevelopmental treatment trained,
Okay.
and just their knowledge base of movement and functional movement and the impact that I was seeing them have with the kiddos that they were working with, I was like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
So getting the training was really a game changer for me
Yeah.
professionally.
Mhm.
It's just really grown my knowledge base, my foundational knowledge of development, and then where to go from the beginning. And so, um, kind of neurodevelopmental treatment. The neuro part is anything having to do with the brain or spinal cord, your nervous system, your
Mhm.
nerves. And then development is, of course, overall motor development is the main focus of this philosophy. That said, there are neurodevelopmental therapists who work across the lifespan into adulthood as well, working with people who have had things like traumatic brain injuries and
Mhm.
strokes, that kind of thing. So, but definitely has a great place in pediatrics, and so that's where kind of my knowledge base comes from, and where I really
Wow.
love working with kiddos who have developmental delays, and who especially have some maybe complications with their neurological system. So,
Yeah, I could see that being a huge added benefit just from outside of OT, because OT is really just the movements and positioning, or I guess explain a little bit about how they're different.
yeah, so OT, especially in pediatrics, well, OT in general, the occupation part of
Mhm.
occupational therapist is
Mhm.
helping people with the work of life.
Yeah.
And so for a baby, for example, their work is to eat,
Mhm.
sleep, poop, play, all of those
Basics.
great things. And so, the neurodevelopmental training just
Mhm.
feeds right
Okay.
into working on those foundational skills that are
Mhm.
required for those daily occupations.
Awesome. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's a good, yeah, it's especially working with kids, you can really see just how much they grow and how much each day, each week, they all change. And so, one of my kind of emphasis questions for you was for parents that either have a NICU stay, either whether it's a short or a long NICU stay, or just a first time parents that might not know where to start or have any idea of different positionings, or if they were a preemie or anything like that, what would you say? Where would where would you suggest a parent begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this is something that I've really come to um, be passionate about more recently, especially as I've gotten to work with and know more and more miracle babies and miracle
Mhm.
families who have been in the NICU. Is I just would love to encourage um, parents to remember that they're parents
Yeah,
first.
yeah,
And becoming a parent is really hard.
yeah.
And when you add on the layer of having a baby who has some more medical needs,
Mhm.
that may have had an extended stay in the hospital in the NICU,
Mhm.
um, you know, it can be, it can become that the parent is the procedural,
Mhm.
not necessarily medical provider, but you're doing
Yeah.
procedures with
You're
your
doing a
kiddo.
lot of medical stuff for sure.
Yeah,
And then you're
yeah,
learning from all these expertise in the NICU. So it's hard to have a
yeah.
separation of being a parent and then, learning different moves in the NICU and even going home and not having all that support anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
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 And so I guess my first little just tidbit would just be to remember that you're a parent first and to have fun with your baby and
Yeah.
play with your baby. And, yes, there are other things that you can do
Mhm.
to be very intentional as you're playing.
Yeah.
But, your job as a parent is to love your baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the number
That's
one.
awesome. Yeah, I love that. No, I love it's attachment first, right? For
Yes.
even doing play or even, our miracle babies, especially in the NICU where you don't maybe you're striving for that bond. And then when you get home, you're round the clock. It's so important to have that safety and attachment and security for them to feel safe to explore and do different moves and positioning. They have to feel safe and loved.
Exactly, and those attachment foundations will last a
Mhm.
lifetime.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That's awesome. I do you have any, I guess, with kids that are learning to tummy time or even developmental, maybe the adjusted age piece, any certain fun like toys or resources or things? Because I know like consumerism is huge in parent, especially a first time parent, because you're literally researching everything and it's just like to get your baby to sleep at night, use this thing. And who knows if it works? Like every kid is different. But I didn't know if you have like some good OT type of toys that are, pretty good to use.
Yeah, yeah, and I meant to grab my favorite toy. It's just a little ball that's got lots of holes in it, that's
Okay.
easy to grasp and
Yeah.
easy to play with. There's little
Yeah.
rattly beads in there. That's one of my most favorite baby toys
Yeah.
on the planet. It is the simplest toy, but
Yeah.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Um, I think another great thing is just your face, your
Yeah.
facial expressions. I once interacted with a therapist who always wore bright red lipstick, and
Oh,
she's like,
fun.
I want them to look at my face and,
Yeah.
and that's what babies, we have evidence that shows that babies are attracted to faces and they like looking at them. And so using yourself
Yeah.
as a play manipulative
I never
is a
thought about
really
that.
great strategy.
That's so
And
moms,
it's
even if you're
free.
staying at home, wear some fun lipstick, like a reason to dress up, some good self-care.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, just in general, one other thing is just, let your baby play on the floor. I think we can get overwhelmed as parents, like you said, with all of the gadgets, and there's this and this and this.
Mhm.
And, I think our babies learn best by, doing that tummy time on the floor, being on their backs on the floor. That's where they learn to roll and sit and crawl. Um, I call them baby containers. You don't have to have a container for your
Yeah,
baby in every room of the house
yeah,
or every for every situation. The
yeah.
floor is
Oh, for
awesome.
sure. And it gets expensive too, for sure.
Yes.
Those
Yeah.
containers are, yeah. I've even learned different, maybe I learned it from you, doing in the diaper box. when they get trunk control, being
Oh,
able to wheel them around in a little laundry basket or
yeah,
diaper box.
laundry basket, that's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
go-to.
That's so fun. Yeah, I think it's so important to be creative, and especially if money is tight for some families and not having to go out and get the best and the coolest, but figuring out how to be creative and do your own stuff that you have at home. And babies don't know the difference, I'm sure. But I was
Yep.
curious, for what not adjusted age, but I guess I've heard things from OT specifically about like too much of one thing can be a bad thing. So like too much of tummy time can actually be not so great for them or different. Like if you do one thing too much, like, and I know they have that with like the bouncers, if you don't leave them in for an hour on end, but what is your kind of, if we're, I guess, preemies at home or newborns or different, I guess, under that one age, what is kind of that secret tummy time? Like how long should parents be? Is it better to do small chunks throughout the day or one size fits all, or what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think there's a one size fits all
Yeah.
recommendation. Every baby's different. I feel like the most consistent thing that I've heard is that a good goal to have would be an hour a day.
Okay.
And that's not an hour all at once.
Okay.
You can do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes if they're in a really good mood.
Okay.
Remembering that these babies are little and
Yeah.
they might not have the attention or the endurance,
Mm.
the muscle control,
Yeah.
to sustain these things, to do these things that we're asking them to do for an extended period of time.
Okay.
And so when you hear those kinds of recommendations, oh, an hour a day, that's so much time.
Yeah.
But
Break
if
it
you
up.
can do, 3 minutes here
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's probably well, especially for the kiddos that maybe hate tummy time. Do you have any recommendations for that they yeah, parents are like, "I don't know what to do because my kiddo hates tummy time. They hate being around."
Yeah. Tummy time can look really different.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be on a beautiful quilt that was hand embroidered
Yeah.
on the floor. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be this photogenic
yeah,
situation.
'kay.
But definitely, even just having a baby, being chest to chest with your baby and
Yeah,
leaning back just even
okay,
a couple inches,
okay,
that counts. That's tummy
okay,
time.
okay.
And that's a great way to start,
Okay.
especially if you have a baby that has a hard time. I'm happy. I don't know if you want me to share some more specific
Sure.
examples.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So I have my little baby doll here
Oh,
that
fun. Cute.
can help me demonstrate.
Yeah.
But like I said, just being chest to chest with
Okay.
your baby and leaning back, the more you lean back, the
More
more
refined.
difficult it's going to
Okay,
be.
okay,
And so you can be anywhere between fully upright and fully flat on your back, like on
okay,
the bed or on the couch.
okay,
So that's one way that you can do it.
okay.
Another nice way that I like to do tummy time, ooh, my blurry screen is blurry, is maybe not necessarily holding the baby way up high like this, but
Okay,
carrying the baby like this on their
okay.
belly.
Oh,
That counts
okay.
as tummy time. They're having to use these muscles back here
Mm.
to not flop like my baby doll does.
Yeah.
And you can really be nice and supportive and give
Yeah,
them nice positional support with your hands. This is another nice thing to do, way to do tummy time if a baby has a G tube
okay.
or has had, any kind of procedures
Mhm,
on their tummy or their chest
mhm.
where they might be a little bit sensitive to
Okay.
pressure on their chest.
Yeah,
So carrying them face down, and you can kind of adjust your hand position around
okay.
whatever sensitive areas there might be on the kiddo.
I love
So
that.
just a couple of different little ideas.
Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned the G tube, and I have a lot of followers on my Instagram that have maybe reflux that they're struggling with, and that can turn into or just the torticollis piece. And so, what with your baby doll, are you able to show any stretches for the neck that in the hold to kind of help
Yeah,
release some of
sure.
that?
Yeah, I mean, without getting too much into the nitty gritty,
Oh,
um, if a baby has a torticollis, just holding them in a side lying position,
yeah. Okay.
with their, whichever
That
side
is
they tend to tilt their neck to.
yeah.
If I tend to
Mhm.
tilt my neck this way, holding my baby to this side,
Yeah.
so
For
that
sure.
they're kind of having to work in the opposite way,
Okay.
or vice versa.
Mhm.
Um, and again, just like with the tummy time idea, you can kind of give as much or withdraw your support if
Okay.
they're as they're getting stronger.
Okay.
So this little sideline carry is
Yeah.
a great thing for
Yeah.
kiddos that have torticollis.
Awesome.
That's another one where I would definitely say if you have concerns about neck
Mhm.
position or muscle tightness or anything like that, check with your pediatrician,
Yeah.
or your OT or PT.
Yeah.
They would be great resources to give some more ideas for that kind of thing
Yeah.
and more specific to your kiddo.
So that was my next question, kind of about referrals and resources. So if somebody doesn't know where to start of how to get into see a therapist, or is the pediatrician probably their best place to start?
That's your best place to start. They're
Yeah.
kind of the gatekeepers for referring for services.
Yeah.
I will say that the early intervention system in the
Mhm.
state of New Mexico is really great. You can actually
Yeah.
self refer
Okay.
to early intervention. A parent can self refer their child.
Awesome.
And so that's just,
And
a
it's
simple,
free.
and it's
Free.
free.
Free for
Yes.
parents.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. And they come to your home. So even
Great.
better.
Yeah. I found it's a mix of the early intervention. It's nice to be at home because they have their own toys and they're independent and they're familiar with their space. But also, as a mom that didn't get out much, it was also nice to be able to get out of the house, even if it's for a medical appointment. It's nice to be able to get clothes on and dressed and leave your house.
Yep.
Cabin fever can be real. Um,
Yeah.
but I love that position you showed of, like, on their tummy, because, like, holding them like that, because it's kind of a new worldview for them to look at too, and
Mhm.
for the longest time, I was kind of fearful of doing that with the G-tube, and now that he's crawling, it's like, "Oh, is it gonna rub? Is it gonna" anything like that, so,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's great. Do you have any recommendations or movements for maybe kids that are wheelchair bound or have cerebral palsy, that don't have maybe the whole motor of the body, but maybe the eyes or the head or things like that? I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard
Or
one because it really
yeah.
is a little bit more specific to the individual. I mean, definitely, I love getting kids mobile as
Yeah.
early as possible.
um,
And so, whether that's a walker, a stander, a
yeah.
wheelchair, um, there's some nice research out there that shows that the earlier we give kids mobility, the better their
Yeah.
cognitive development is, the
Yeah.
better their social skills are. And so um, I think that's just generally speaking, that would
Yeah.
be my biggest recommendation is,
Yeah.
and I know that it can be scary for parents,
Mhm.
and it might be like, well, I don't want to put my kiddo in a wheelchair because
Mhm.
that means they're never going to walk. Just
Mm,
because you give your kiddo a wheelchair
yeah,
doesn't mean you can't still work on walking
that makes
and
sense.
other forms of mobility.
Yeah.
But giving kiddos that independent mobility as early as possible really is really
Yeah.
important.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And it's crazy to see how, yeah, how much they can change and learn and develop, and that the gray matter in the brain, neuroplasticity, that
Yeah.
changes. Like that's a huge thing. So,
Yeah.
um, well, thank you. Do you have any other kind of tips or advice or things you'd want maybe new parents or parents that just are coming home from the NICU, anything like that?
Well, I guess my only other thing that I thought that might be helpful to mention today, is because I know tummy time is like the buzzword, and
Mhm.
every pediatrician and therapist will say your child needs tummy time.
Yeah.
But that's really hard for some kids. And again,
Yeah.
going back to the G tube thing, the
Yeah.
reflux thing, that can be a really hard position for kiddos.
Yeah.
And so, my almost favorite position, dare I say, that I like even better than tummy time
Mhm.
would be side lying,
Okay.
and playing on the floor on your side. Tummy time will strengthen those muscles
Mhm.
symmetrically on
Yeah.
both sides of the body,
Mhm.
that you're working against gravity when you're laying
Mhm.
on your tummy. But
Mhm.
if you're laying on your side, you're working those same muscles just
Mm.
one side at a time.
Gotcha.
And so that can be a really nice early way
Mm.
to introduce tummy time,
Mhm.
to kind of lay a foundation for tummy time if that is
Mhm.
challenging,
Yeah,
and to start in more of a sideline position.
that's great.
So that might be another good starting place
Yeah,
for some
that's a
of these
great one.
kiddos that struggle
And
with that.
I remember the NICU ROTs, whatever you do to one side, you gotta do on the other.
That's
Like,
right.
you gotta always be changing up, make sure
That's
you're with
right.
holding in position, so,
Yep.
I love that, and side lane, yeah, if a kid is hating tummy time, then a baby, it sounds like it could be more tolerable then, and maybe not as hard for
Yeah. I
the
do
patient.
frequently find that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your expertise and knowledge, and I'm excited to share this with our community of our miracle kids and their parents, and hopefully they'll find this useful to be able to utilize some of these different things. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's my
thanks
pleasure.
so much.